How you doing, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to tie a cool crappie jig that uses a multicolor tail. This is a great way to utilize feathers that you have left over so that the parts don't go to waste. And it also creates a really cool looking jig that's different from what the fish usually see. So for this jig, I'm starting off with a 1/16 ounce round jig head on a size 6 sickle hook. I powder painted that with ProTec white. For the thread, I'm going to be using a 6/0 white uni thread. Since this is a shorter shank hook, I'm going to take my thread, start it behind the head, and take it down to the end of the hook shank rather than to the point, just so that we have nice proportions. For the base color of the tail, we're going to be using a single yellow marabou feather. I'm just going to run my fingers up the feather from the stem, just to straighten the tips, line that up, and then we can measure that out so that it'll be about the length of the hook. We're going to pinch that in right where our thread is, just pinch it nice and tight. Then give it a few tight wraps of thread. As long as you keep it pinched in place, it shouldn't twist around on you. After you get a few wraps, you can twist that feather up the rest of the way. Just tie it up to the head. Then take all those fibers back on the butt end of the feather. Make sure you clear the eye and the head. And then grab that feather and clip it off. Make sure to clip it as close as you can, and it will leave some little fuzzies behind, so we're just going to clean those up with the thread. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just going to cover those up a bit and then take our thread back down to the tail. Now I have some spare feathers that I was going to throw away, but instead I'll just use for this jig. I've got some red and black, so I'm going to take a few fibers of the red marabou. Just pinch them in right on the side there, just the same way as we did the yellow feather, and then tie that in nice and tight. Give it a couple turns. Then we're going to take one and put it on the other side. Just a few of the fluffy fibers gives it a nice coloration. So just pinch that in on the opposite side, give it a few tight wraps again. Make sure you keep these butt ends out of the way so they don't get stuck in the tail. Then we can clip those off. And now I'm going to add a couple fibers of black on top of the red. It may look a little weird now, but when this jig is wet, you can see what it really does with those colors. So I'll show you that at the end. So just keep that in right on the side. Do the same thing on the other side again. This will just give us a tricolor tail. And the inspiration for this coloration was actually from one of my favorite soft plastics I used to fish a long time ago. It was a tube jig that had a yellow, red, and black tail, and it produced a lot of fish, so I'm just copying that. And then you can either clip those fibers just like the red ones, or you can tie them up to the head. I'm going to do that just to give it a little more bulk. Then bring the thread back down and back up. This will just make sure everything stays secure. For the body, I'm going to use some red rayon chenille. This is just a small sized red chenille. I would use medium if possible, but if you just have small, you can just do a couple layers. So I'm just going to tie the tag end in at the head and tie the main chenille down to the tail. Once you got that nice and tight, bring your thread back up to the head, and you can start wrapping the chenille. Just make sure to keep constant tension on the chenille to make sure it doesn't have any lumps, and this will just make sure the body stays nice and flush. We're just going to keep each turn pressed against the last, tie that up to the head, and then since this is a small chenille, I'm going to bring it back down to the tail again, because I do want a thicker body. And then bring it back up to the head once again. This will just give us a nice plump body. Again, this is mimicking a tube jig that I used to fish a long time ago that worked really well. Red body, yellow, red, and black tail. Once you get that chenille back up to the head, You can tie that down real tight, give it 3 or 4 tight wraps, give it a wrap in front of the chenille, and then you can clip that off. And now we're going to whip finish. Just keep the thread pressed against the head, give it about 6 turn whip finish, pull the thread tight, and clip it off. So that's it. It's a really cool multicolor jig. It's a simple body and a simple head, but that tail really brings it to life. So let me get it wet to show you what it looks like. So as you can see, when it's wet, those fibers straighten out and you can see the red and the black really stand apart from the yellow. And when it's in motion, it has a really cool coloration. So definitely try it out and then look at it when you're jigging it in the water, and it has a whole new effect. It's a more sustainable way to use your feathers. It catches more fish and it saves you some money. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.